Although there are great reasons to start tech blogging, so many software engineers avoid writing. Some feel they don't have anything to write about. Some are afraid of criticism or internet trolls, and others just never considered to start tech blogging to begin with. Since 2017, I've been mentoring dozens of engineers to write their first blog post. In this talk, I will share some of my experience with tech blogging, recommend guidelines for writing and editing, and share some tips and tricks that for your first successful blog post. So hi, my name is Dafna Mordechai. I studied computer science in the Hebrew University and graduated in 2008. I've been working in the industry since as a real-time embedded software engineer. I love technology, I love sharing it with others, and today I want to share some of it with you. In addition to my day job, I volunteer at the Ba'ot organization. Ba'ot is Israel's largest community of experienced women in tech, with over 3,000 software engineers, data scientists, and algorithm developers. I volunteer as a co-manager of the technical blogging program, where we encourage engineers to start writing technical blog posts. When we started a few years ago, we hardly knew any technical blog post written by women. Today, there are hundreds of blog posts published online written by women in the Ba'ot community. In this talk, I hope to convince you that you want to start writing a technical blog post. You will see the process of writing and editing, and I will also share some tips for your first blog post. So why should you start blog posting? There are a few reasons for that. One of them is to own what you know. It's one thing to do a good job on your task, but it's another thing to be able to explain clearly what you did, to outline the possible alternatives, or to reflect on the decision-making process. These abilities are some of the things that we look in senior engineers. And by blogging, you can develop these skills faster. You can also learn by teaching. Just take a subject that maybe you don't know a lot about or that you need for your job and start writing about it. You will learn on the process. Another reason is just to share your knowledge with others, just like others are sharing all the time, and we use it all the time in our day-to-day job. Another thing is to improve your digital presence, such that when someone will look you online, they will see the things you did. It's like a portfolio that you create. I also believe in karma. You give your time, you give your knowledge and your skills for free, and one day it will come back to you. Okay, so maybe I've convinced you that there are good reasons to blog, but answer this question honestly. In your opinion, who can start and have a technical blog? Well, my answer is you. And the only thing that you need for that is commitment. Everyone can benefit from writing at any level and with any professional background. It is true that goals may vary. If you are an engineer that you just started working, you can use a blog post as a learning tool. If you're a PhD graduate, you can share the research you did with the world and share your work online. If you're a senior developer, you can share your interests and find friends maybe to work on a side project or start open source coding. There is room for everyone. Well, if writing technical blog posts is so great, how come not everyone is doing it? Well, we sometimes have these voices in our heads that discourage us from writing. So I want us now to face our demons. And I would specifically like to address some of these voices and some of these insecurities, since from my experience, they are very, very common. And there is a good answer for each and every one of them. So some things like, I don't have anything to write about. We tend to take for granted the experience we already have, but it is very, very interesting for someone who's doing similar work or for someone that works in a different domain. In addition, after you will start writing, you will see that you have a lot more to say than you thought. Another thing we hear a lot is there are already blog posts about X, about this topic. It is true. But still, when we get into a new field and we look for a blog post online, we tend to read a few of them. And we want to see a few different angles of the same subject. And each post is a bit different. In addition, your own style and your own viewpoint matters. It could be really helpful for a lot of other people. And on this specific point, I would like to say something about women, because we don't tend to hear a lot of our voices in the public domain. Writing technical blog posts is also being a role model for others. I'm afraid of criticism. People sometimes don't say that aloud, but it's true. We all are. But I think that you will see that the monster is not that scary, and there is less criticism than you think. In addition, I think that a lot of people will appreciate the time and effort you took to take your knowledge and put it online. And you will also find that there are some good monsters, and you will get good feedbacks as well. A lot of things that we hear in our workshop is, I'm not an expert. And it's true that some of us are not experts. But as I mentioned before, tech blogging has a lot of different things it can do, and one of them is to learn. Another thing is that sometimes you are expert in some domain and you're not even aware of that. If you're doing something well for a few years at your specific day job, you're probably more expert than most of the people that will just get into this field. So we sometimes tend to undermine that. And also, we all the time read posts from other peer engineers that are not expert as well. They are beginners and they just write things up, and we use it all the time. So it is important, even if you don't see yourself as an expert. Another thing we hear a lot is, my English isn't good enough. And it's true that a lot of us are not native English speakers. But there are a lot of tools that we can use before we publish in order to go over the blog post and ensure that we have good quality. So some of the tools are online tools, and we can also ask for peer reviews and to consult some native English speakers before we publish. So although it may sound scary, it is something that we can mitigate. Another thing is the thought that starting a blog is a big commitment and that you're going to have to start writing regularly. I want to say that it's not true. You can start by writing your first blog post and it can have an impact that you don't even think of. And we've seen a lot of that when we work with engineers. You can start and then you can see that you like it and you want to write more. Or you can just have this first blog post as a learning process that afterwards you can use whenever you want. It can be if you have a specific project. It could be for documentation inside your work and not even to be published. It could be for anything, but you need to go through this first blog post just in order to gain these skills and these abilities. Okay, so now that I may convince you that blogging is for you, let's go over some writing guidelines and the writing process. So I listed here a few ideas that you can write about. Some of them are minor, as small bugs that we sometimes encounter, and we need to find the answer for it online. And some of them are really big design decisions or architectural decisions. You may need this list in the beginning, but later you will see that you will develop a blogger mindset, where you start seeing potential blog posts all around you. Each bug or each design decision can pop up for you as a topic for your next blog post, and you will see the drafts are just piling up. So I personally believe that we all are creative. We're all creative by nature, and that you just need to awaken this ability with some training. And the first blog post can be a good training for that. So again, we use tutorials all the time. Sometimes we use a new library and the documentation isn't good enough. So if we gain something, even just out of installing a new library, if you post it online, you will see that sometimes it will get a lot of hits. Another term that is important to know is the term shitty draft. It means that you will start writing without the internal voice that criticizes you. It means that you write without the internal editor that demands that everything will be perfect to begin with. It will not be perfect, and it's okay. The point is that it will not be perfect. It will be your first draft. We will edit everything later. But what we want to do in this process is to allow ourselves to put all the content that we know, all the professional content on the paper without being blocked in the writing process. So what you do first is just outline the shitty draft. Let's go through the work process. Some engineers doesn't need that. They can just start writing and they have an idea in their head. They just need to sit down and do it. But I think just to see the entire list can also help out. So first, we're going to map our interest and choose one specific idea. We recommend to choose something small. If you have a few options that you're considering, specifically if it's the first blog post that you are writing. You will see that a small idea will tend to get bigger and bigger when you're going to need to add some background and maybe add some drawing, and maybe during the writing process you will see that it will get bigger and bigger. So be focused on one specific thing. Another important thing is to write something that you are interested about, because it's going to take time, and you want to write about something that you are passionate about, and you can spend the time doing writing. Now you're going to write the outline and all the key points. It can be just a list of 4 or 5 things that you want to say. And then you start with the shitty draft. You're going to elaborate on each and every point, organize the information, make sure the flow is correct. Sometimes you'll see that maybe you would like to change things, or that after putting them on paper, you will see that they don't make sense, or that you need to investigate about something. But once you have the anchors of the key points, you can start working with it and elaborate on them until you will have your first shitty draft. Then you're going to start editing, and we'll go through some guidelines in a bit. In addition to all that, sometimes we don't tend to think about all the things that we need that are in addition to the paragraphs themselves, like code snippets or links or diagrams you sometimes need to create, or just images for inspiration. And some of the people like to add too long didn't read. So all of this takes an additional time, and you will have to do that while editing or after editing. And then what we usually do is ask for peer reviews. It could be someone from your specific technical domain that can give you feedback about what you wrote, and search for this little maybe things that are less accurate, or maybe they have a different point of view on something that you would like to add, or just to take into consideration when you are writing. And in addition, if you're not a native English speaker and you wrote the post in English, maybe you would like someone to go over that. And then you publish. That's like the moment we are all waiting for. But it is not done with publishing, because you also need to spread the word. So this is the main process. We'll go over some of the things here right now. Okay, so there are a few things to notice while you're doing this draft that we just went through. One of them is to define the technical background of the reader. You don't need to explain everything for beginners. You don't need to explain everything from scratch. But you do need to have some profile of who it is that you are writing to, and try to be consistent when you're going through different topics. If you're outlining a few different issues, to start from the same background and the same technical knowledge for the reader. Another big thing is the first paragraph. You should tempt the reader to stay and read, because we are flooded with digital content, and we always have something that demands our attention. And the first paragraph should help the reader to decide if they want to read your post or not. And don't use it as a clickbait. Promise something and keep what you just promised. I'm sure that the readers will appreciate it. A short summary can be useful. Some of the people put it in the beginning, so maybe the reader will decide to read that, even if she's not going to read the entire blog post. Some people use it at the end of the post just to recap and summarize. So not every blog post needs it, but it can sometimes help to organize what you just did, and to show the reader this is what we went through in this specific blog post. Another important thing is the last paragraph. It's important because usually the reader will remember that most. So you can recap, you can link to other resources, you can link to your own work or like some related work that you think is relevant for further reading. Right. So now you have a sheeted draft, and you poured all the content and the knowledge you have into it, and we can start editing it. It will take time. Editing can make the post be shareable, be better in its quality, and it can make the reader stay engaged, and it can influence the reader to follow you to other things that you post. So I have a few tips for you. One of them is to find your voice, and that's something that when we write a first 3D draft, we don't always even notice that we do have some default voice that we write with, and we can change it. We can change it if we're noticing it, and if we are mindful for the voice that we already put on paper. So what do I mean by voice? The first thing is just to write with confidence. And there's a tricky point here because a lot of people, if you remember the demons we talked about in the beginning, a lot of people are afraid that they're not expert and maybe they're not sure about things and they get insecure about that. So you don't need to be an expert, but you do need to check each and every paragraph and every technical thing that you put on paper and to see that it is valid. And if you're not sure about it, go out and check it and use it as a tool to learn while you are writing. If you did this process, you should be confident about what you just wrote, and then you should write with confidence. You should own what you are writing, and don't hesitate with your wording. So the first thing is just to write with confidence and gain this confidence in the process. But another thing is your style, and there's a variety of voices that we can choose in order to write within, and that's a bit an advanced topic, but you can think about it as how you will appear in your digital presence. What do I mean by that? So in technical writing, we can be very precise and very dry in a way, like a washing machine manual. But we can also be more creative with it and like do a code wrapping or to find some funny examples. And you see that all the time in blog posts. So there is a big range and you can choose from that. What is your voice? Another thing is the way you approach the reader and the way you approach someone that you are currently teaching. So one of them is to be helpful and supportive, and a lot of women tends to go to this place. So use this with cautious. But it can be like, "Oh, you have a bug. I know. I had this one before. Let me show you step by step how you can get over it and how you can solve it." But you can also be very authoritative and like, "Oh, you have a bug. How did it happen? Let me show you the steps that it will never happen again," like a shame on you attitude. So I'm not saying which is better. I'm just saying that when you are writing, you have this, there's a subtext to what you're writing, and you should notice that, and you should choose. And another thing is sometimes when we go over the post again, we can be more inspirational and more playful, and we can do that by adding small changes or maybe finding words that are not from the technical domain and somehow find a playful way to insert them in. So that's also something that you can do. Okay. Another thing is to use active voice. And that's another way of owning the things we write and owning our writing. There's a funny test from Twitter, is the zombies test. Can you add by zombies after the verb? If so, that's a passive voice and you should consider changing it. Let's take a look at an example. When the program is reading in C, by zombies. Zombies can definitely be there. So maybe you would like to consider to change that when I write a program in C. So by doing that, by using active voice, we take ownership on what we write. We also take ownership on our expertise and our professional capabilities. Another thing that we can do in editing is vary sentence lengths. There's a really nice example here that is also highlighted with colors of the length of sentences. If you write in a monotonous way, your readers may not be engaged. They may be bored. You should consider not to do that. So, um, by by choosing the length of the sentences and the paragraphs, it has two purposes for that. One of them, as I said, is to keep the reader engaged, but the other is just to teach better. Because if you have a complicated idea that you're trying to explain, you may want to use maybe shorter sentences to keep the reader focused, especially if it's something difficult. So, as he says here, don't just write words, write music. Another rule for editing is just to omit words. If you can give the same information with less words, in a way you provide a service for your reader. There's a really nice quote by Stephen King. The road to hell is paved with adverbs, and he actually means it. So you can say, I talked loudly, but you can say, I yelled. And you can omit words in other ways, like at this point of time, you can just say now. And we said before that we all the time have a lot of content that we can choose from. So if you can eliminate words, just try to do so. If you can say the same thing and convey the same message with less words, I think it's a good thing to do. Or there's a lot of things online about how to eliminate the word very, like very interesting, fascinating. If you will look it up online, you will see things like 128 words to use instead of very. So again, search for these things when you are editing and try to write less. And it can be about eliminating specific words, but it can be that when you're writing something that you wrote in the shitty draft phase, maybe it will pop up to you that you can say the same thing in a different way. So edit it. I think there's also something about the shitty draft is to take the ideas from your head and put it on the paper. And now you can take a look at them. You don't need to hold them in your head, and you have more energy to go over them and think about it again. So this is exactly what we're doing when we're editing. So I'll give some nice quotes here, like, if I had more time, I would write a shorter letter. That's by Blaise Pascal. So as we said before, in order to be concise and in order to respect your reader's time, you need to invest this time. So it will take you more time, but it will spare a lot of time for a lot of readers, and they will come back for more. And another quote I really like is, in writing, you must kill all your darlings. And I like this quote because it reflects a feeling that we have when we need to delete something that we already did, that is already done. It's like doing refactoring for a working code just to make it even better. And you have a bit of grief over there of something that you're losing. You're deleting something of yourself, in a sense. So if you can just identify and be mindful that you have this, oh no, I don't want to delete that, it will be easier for you to delete it and to kill your darlings and to make your blog post even better. Okay, so I have some more tips and tricks that we gathered along the way that are not specifically related just to writing or editing. And some of them is the traps and pitfalls in the way to your first blog post. Because as I said before, it takes some commitment and time, and a lot of people start, but not necessarily getting to the end of it. And I think there are a few things that we can point out. So one of the pitfalls is when, I think we see it a lot when people are more insecure about their abilities, is to write about soft skills, like writing about 10 ways to get into data science position, like a job. And it's good, and people will read that. But I think that in our program, what we try to do is just to do the hardcore, just to do the engineering or the algorithm development, not to talk about like the fluff around it, even though it is useful and it is something that people will read. So just think about it. Are you tending to go this path, or are you writing on the technical subject matter? Also, another thing is that a lot of people write for beginners. And I think, as I said before, sometimes people does that because they think they have to provide all the information of something they're writing. But sometimes people do that because they feel more safe to write in the beginning, something that is like introduction to something. But you can choose not to, and you can write for your colleagues. And if you will invest the time to learn while you are writing, you definitely don't need to write for beginners. We also see that sometimes people need a lot of time to investigate in something. So I think writing a blog post is not when you're first time learning a new topic. It's after you know something and you just want to write about it, and maybe, as I said before, own what you already know. You can write about something that you're learning now when you will have some solid knowledge about it, but not when you know nothing about it. Also, when people want to write about side projects, they sometimes see that that they need to rewrite a lot of the project all over again. So my tip for that is that when you are doing a side project and you're thinking about writing it in the future, maybe you should put some notes for yourself while you're doing the project, because it will be hard to remember whatever you did hours and hours before. And if you see that it takes too much time, maybe you should choose another small and very well-defined topic for your first blog post. Another pitfall is that when people they underestimate how long it's going to take them, and then they get discouraged. So let me tell you, it will take a lot of time. It can take up to 20 or 30 hours. It depends if you have some experience in writing and how your English is or how complicated your topic is. But don't get discouraged. Just dedicate yourself to finish it. And also another thing that happens is that people tend to over-edit. You need to edit, you need to do all the things that I did. Maybe not all the rules, maybe just some of them, and in some point of time it will be good enough, and then you should publish. Don't over-edit, start working on your next draft. Okay, so another question that we are asked a lot is, where shall I publish? And sometimes people spend time thinking about it, and they waste time that they could write. So if you know that you want to write regularly, there are simple ways that you can have your own website, like using WordPress, or you can do the same thing on GitHub Pages, and you can find great tutorials online that you can do that in like a couple of hours. But if you're not sure about it and you're just starting your first blog post, I think it's a great idea, and I highly recommend to sign up to one of the platforms such as Medium, or like to publish in the dev community where everyone is developers and engineers, and just get started with it. If you would like later on to open your own website, you can always copy your blog posts and then publish them later. So here are some examples. You can see Ophir's blog posts, posts on the GitHub Pages on our own website. Iris and Chief here, this is their Medium account. And I also have a specific website that I uploaded to Wix, I built it over Wix, to a specific tutorials for one specific workshop of IoT with Arduino. So we have a lot of options. You can just get started right away. And again, spread the word. After you hit the publish button, you need to spread the word around. Do you remember the demons that we talked about and about the criticism? You may find out that a bigger monster is that people don't get to see your post because there's so many content out there. So you should post it on your LinkedIn, on your Twitter account. Maybe you should search for Facebook groups that are interested in this specific topic that you just published a post about, and spread the word. You need to do that. So I give you here a list of tools that you can also use. There are a lot of grammar checkers and editing tools online. Most of them are free. I highly recommend to sign up for one of them that you think is good if you're not a native English speaker. There's also Capitalize by Title. Take a look at it, search for that online. And I have a few links here for you for pictures that are, some of them are free to use or free with credits, and graphic design that you may need. Okay, some quick more tips and tricks that I have for you is, one of them is deep work. Search for this book online. Basically what it means that you're going to turn off your mobile phone and all other distractions and just dedicate to do one single task. You will be surprised to see how much work you can do with just 1 hour of no distractions. We do it in our workshops and it works great. An additional thing is to set deadlines. You will find all the hours you need if you have a deadline. It's a good practice. Another good practice is to write regularly. You should put it on your schedule, maybe just set a time to do that, and you will see that you will do more by committing to that. Another thing is to find an accountability buddy, just someone that knows that you have a goal for your first blog post and can ask you what is going on with this. Maybe find a friend that wants to do the same thing so you can consult in this process. And obviously, practice makes perfect. You'll start tech blogging and you see that it's getting easier and easier and faster and faster, and that you like it even more. But done is better than perfect. That's also an important lesson to learn. Okay, so I hope that by now, after you put all this work, you definitely deserve to hit the publish button, and that I hope that you will get to the point that you'll see that hard work definitely pays off and that you should celebrate that. I hope that I convinced you that tech blogging is for you. I hope that you feel that you have all the tips and tricks that you need and all the tools you need to get started. I also want to say a few more words about karma. When I started volunteering, I didn't expect to learn so much. You see here some pictures of the speakers that volunteered in our program, and they shared freely of their time and their knowledge just to encourage other people to start tech blogging. So I learned a lot from them, and I hope that I passed on some of the knowledge today. A special thanks goes to Natalie Bendelski-Shalem, who participated in our first workshop, and later she created a talk specifically about editing technical blog posts. Most of the editing tips that I gave you today, I learned from Natalie, so thank you. She also has a lecture about it in Hebrew, and so you should definitely check it out if it's relevant for you. A mantra that we always share in our workshop is we rise by lifting others, and that's so true. The team that you see here are the managers of the tech blogging programs. We all have our day-to-day jobs and we all dedicate more time to learn and to grow, and we still feel that the time that we invest in volunteering gives us way, way more than what we give. And we hope that we make the ecosystem a bit more friendly for women. And this could all happen due to the founders and managers of the BOAT organization. So I just wanted to say thank you to Avital, Neta, Dafna, and Karinbel. I truly feel that this organization changed the careers for a lot of Israelis, women, like the women in tech community, on a day-to-day basis. I really feel they do a lot of impact, and I'm really happy to take a part of that. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. And I hope that you will find technical blogging is creative and fun, and that you would love it just like I do. Thank you.